Hi everyone, it's Danny. Okay, so today I'm gonna be making a video that was highly requested by many of you guys, and this is how I water my orchids. I know in the past I did another video on how I water my orchids, but along the way, as I learned myself, I kind of changed the technique. And the main change was that I do not reuse the same water with multiple orchids, exception being the Vanda orchids, just because it would be too hassling to water them separately, and of course not economical. But the main change is that I do not reuse water, simply because reusing water can actually transfer pests and snails and all of that from one pot to the other, and of course it can transfer diseases, most importantly viruses. And viruses are something that I really dread lately. I did have some cases, so I just want to avoid that. So for about almost a year now, I am not reusing the same water and everything is fine. My orchids are really not that sick anymore. I don't know how to explain this, but I can see an improvement. I mean, if I have a sick orchid or an orchid with pests, I do not get another bunch of orchids infected with the same thing. And all in all, things are much better. So if you're looking for economical ways to water orchids, this is not the video. I'm not economical at all, but I really dread viruses. That being said, I'll tell you how I water my orchids. Now, in the winter time, my growing space is much colder and much more humid than in my summertime. So because of this reason, what I do in the winter time is actually take each orchid individually and bring it to the bathroom and actually water it at the faucet. I do not soak my orchids because they would stay way too moist. So I don't want the bark to fully soak. So I just run some water on them and let them drain and then bring them back. Of course, I am very careful not to leave any water in the crown and in between the leaves, so I try to remove it as much as I can. Also, I am using a fan to move the air because the windows are actually closed, and that works just fine for me. I just try to provide a lot of ventilation to avoid some rotting. Now, of course, it is pretty laborious because I do a lot of roads to the bathroom, but it's just a way of working out, I guess, in the winter time when you cannot really go outside and take a walk in the park. So I'm actually good with this. It takes me about 2 hours to water about 100 orchids. Because I am efficient at it, it's a really zen time for me, so I don't really mind the roads, and also I can check my orchids really well. If, however, I am fertilizing, I prepare my fertilizer in a bucket, and with a watering can, I take out water from the bucket, and with the same principle, I just try to run it through the pot in the bathtub. So I let everything drain. And yes, of course, I do not reuse the same water, even if it has fertilizer. I like to prepare another batch of fertilized water rather than reuse the same water. Now in the summertime, because things are pretty hot and pretty dry in my balcony, I do like to soak my orchids. And as you can see, most of them have ceramic pots. This serves two purposes. I can actually soak them in these pots, and each orchid has its own individual ceramic pot, and also it keeps the moisture in for a longer period of time. If I wouldn't have these ceramic pots, I most probably would have to water every 3 days or so, which is not necessarily pleasant. So in the summertime, I do benefit from the decorative pots. So what I do in the summertime is I actually have some buckets here which I fill with water. If I have to fertilize, I will add some fertilizer in. If I don't have to fertilize, if it's just a plain water, I just bring some water in my buckets. I also have a watering can. I actually dip this into my buckets, take out the water, and just go about filling each ceramic pot with water. And because I have to let them soak, I really don't mind if they soak for half an hour. It's actually beneficial for them. So I fill up every individual pot that I have, ceramic pot, and actually go on the whole road and just let them soak like crazy because summertime is really hot for me. Of course, when the water runs out from the buckets, I just bring some more. Now, as you can see, not all orchids have decorative pots, and especially the orchids that I keep hanged. What I do in this case is actually I get each orchid down and I soak them in stuff like these. These are actually yogurt containers. I have a whole bunch of them, a whole stash of them that I keep, and actually arrange them on the floor of my balcony and soak each one individually in something like this. Of course, after each watering, I do wash each container with a bleach-based solution, so I disinfect them. When all my orchids are soaked and it's time to dump out the water, I just lift the orchid up and actually dump out all this water in the buckets. The buckets are now empty. and I actually let this drain in the decorative pot, and I go about drenching out all of the orchids and then go back and actually remove whatever water is left just to make sure that my orchids are not standing in the pool of water. Now this process in the summertime takes about 2 hours. Once again, I became efficient at it, and it's actually my zen time. I try to do this early in the morning because then it will get really hot in my balcony, and because of the physical effort, I will not enjoy it. So I do this as early as I can. I do wake up pretty early. I think I wake up at 7. I don't know why. Ever since I worked in an office, I have this routine of waking up at 7. It sucks, but yeah, what can I do? And in the summertime, my orchids are pretty much good to go for at least 5 days or 6 days, which is pretty nice for me. Of course, there are those orchids who need to be watered more often because they have a smaller pot or because they don't have a decorative container and they're potted in bark. Now with the vandas, I actually soak them every day, and the buckets you saw earlier, I keep them in my balcony with water. So every day I soak them at least once. If I have time, I can soak them twice a day in the hottest part of the summertime, and they seem to do just fine. And yeah, basically it melts down to figuring out when your orchids are dry, when they need a water, how much water they need. Maybe they don't really need a good soak like in the summertime. If your environment is pretty cold and pretty humid, maybe they just need some water running through the pot. And yeah, that's basically it with my watering. As I told you, it's not economical. I think I spend about 10 buckets. No, 8 buckets at a watering or so. It's really not economical, but my orchid collection started to be very expensive. I mean, if I put everything together, it would be, I don't know, like in the thousands of euros, and it's not economical for me to actually lose them. So I'd rather spend some tap water, which I pay for, of course, than actually losing some pretty expensive orchids, if you think of it like that. And of course, they're my babies. I don't want to lose them. I love them. So that's my way of watering things. If you don't have 100 orchids like me, this can actually be more economical, but I do advise you to be very careful with spreading diseases and viruses. Viruses have no cure as far as everybody knows. Who knows in the future, but for now they have no cure, and a virus orchid is not a vigorous orchid. It will look bad, the flowers might be deformed, it will not bloom, and so on. It will not do great. In the end, it can actually die after a period of struggle. So that's why I chose to be careful with how I water, because I consider reusing the water being very, very dangerous. I mean, if an orchid just touches leaves just a little bit, it's pretty much okay, but if you share the water, things are gonna get dramatic. So that's how I water stuff. Thank you for suggesting this video. Hope you found it useful. So if you want to watch more videos from me, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. You can ask me questions or give me suggestions for videos in a comment below, and if you just want to stay in touch with me, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter, and you have all the links below. Thank you for joining. I will see you next time. Bye!